In January 2025, German officials stopped a woman at Hamburg airport for crime, smuggling 460 bars of Dubai chocolate spread across 3 suitcases. But this wasn't the first time. Just months earlier, in October 2024, Austrian customs officers seized 52,000 euros worth of undeclared Dubai chocolate from the trunk of a bus at the Hungary-Austria border. By now, you've probably seen the viral videos. Everyone's obsessed with Dubai chocolate, and honestly, I had to see what the hype was about. This is Uttori Lab, where we test, taste, and hopefully triumph. For today's experiment, we're mashing up 2 viral foods, Dubai chocolate and the Focaccia donut. Now, I have to admit, I haven't tried Dubai chocolate yet, and that's because it's nearly impossible to get. With bars reselling for over $100 and reports of people waiting in line for 10 hours, I'll probably be waiting a while too. So in the meantime, I'm doing the next best thing, researching and recreating it myself. But I'm not just stopping at Dubai chocolate. I'm taking things a step further by making a Focaccia donut with Dubai chocolate flavors. If you haven't heard, Focaccia donuts started getting traction last year when creator Lace Bakes made a jam-filled version in episode 8 of her TikTok series, Will It Focaccia? With 6.6 million views, it was modestly viral, but I actually heard about it from a homesteading channel I follow. My dad, a hobby bread maker, was just as intrigued by the Focaccia donut trend as I was. He made it the first time and filled it with blackcurrant jam. It was absolutely unforgettable, crispy on the outside, chewy on the inside, with bursts of sweet jam. It's the kind of thing that haunts you in your dreams. But Focaccia is time-intensive, so it feels like a rare indulgence. Still, I thought it would be perfect for our Christmas breakfast last year, so I tried my hand at making it. Total fail. The texture wasn't right. Nowhere near that perfect crispy, chewy balance. After that flop, I put Focaccia donuts on the back burner, but I couldn't let it go. Now I'm trying again. 3 doughs later, I finally got it. My first 2 attempts had one major issue. The hydration levels were off. The first dough looked wrong, so I kept adding water, only to realize I forgot to use bread flour. The second dough was too stiff. My gut told me it needed more water, but I decided to bake it anyway just to test my theory. And I was right, hydration is the key. Focaccia is a medium to high hydration bread, which means it needs more water than standard bread dough. But why? Bread dough relies on gluten development to create structure and texture. When you add water, the gluten proteins absorb it and form elastic strands, giving bread its chew. Too little water, dough is stiff, dense, and won't develop those open, airy pockets. Too much water, it spreads too much and won't hold shape. In my failed attempts, my water-to-flour ratio was 3:1, way too low for Focaccia. Even worse, I underbaked the second batch. I also forgot to use bread flour the first time. Big mistake. Bread flour has a higher protein content, 12 to 14% versus 8 to 11% in all-purpose flour, which means stronger gluten networks and better chew. To get the airy, crispy, yet chewy texture I wanted, I turned to King Arthur's Pain de Cristal bread recipe. They use it as a base for Focaccia, and I've seen others use a 1:1 water-to-flour ratio for no-knead Focaccia dough. Focaccia is a versatile bread, perfect for riffing on and experimenting with, which is exactly what we're doing with our Dubai chocolate twist. But first, we need to make the bread, so let me show you how. Start by measuring 500 grams, or 4 cups plus 2 1/2 tablespoons of bread flour, using a scale to ensure accuracy, especially since Focaccia relies on precise hydration. Next, measure 500 grams, about 2 cups and 3 tablespoons of water. This should be equal to the flour for a high hydration dough. In a large bowl, whisk together the flour, 3/4 teaspoon of instant yeast, 2 teaspoons of salt, and 1 tablespoon of sugar. Once combined, add the water and mix until it comes together. Lightly grease a rectangular baking dish with 1 tablespoon of neutral oil. Traditionally, olive oil is used, but since we are going for a dessert-style focaccia, we want to avoid the savory notes we would get from olive oil. Transfer the dough to the baking dish and gently coax it into shape. Cover and let it rest for 20 minutes. Now we begin a series of folds to develop gluten structure. We're starting with the 4-corner stretch. Wet your fingers to prevent sticking, then pull each corner of the dough towards the center. Cover and let rise for another 20 minutes. Next is the coil fold. Lift the dough from the center, allowing it to coil onto itself. Place back down, then lift from the other direction, and let coil onto itself. Cover and let rest for another 20 minutes. Repeat this 2 more times. After the 4th fold, let the dough rise for 1 hour and 20 minutes. By now, it should be light, airy, and elastic, ready for the final proof. After baking my first 2 focaccias in deeper pans, I realized that pan depth affects the final height of the bread. The deeper pans encouraged more rise, but for this recipe, I want a thinner focaccia, something closer to a chocolate bar in shape and easier to eat. To fix this, I switched to a large baking sheet instead of a deep pan. Grease the sheet with 2 to 3 tablespoons of neutral oil and carefully transfer the dough. Lightly stretch the dough toward the corners, but don't force it, it will naturally spread during the next rise. Drizzle a little more oil over the top, cover, and let rise for 2 hours. Why so much rise time? Focaccia gets its light, airy texture from fermentation. Since this is a high hydration dough, the yeast works more slowly, requiring longer fermentation. 30 minutes before baking, preheat your oven to 475 degrees Fahrenheit or 245 degrees Celsius. Just before baking, use your fingers to press dimples into the dough, forming rows. The dough should bubble up in between. Bake for 20 minutes. I decided to double check the doneness of my bread since my second attempt was undercooked. If you have a thermometer, check the internal temperature. 200 degrees Fahrenheit or 93 degrees Celsius means it's done. Let the focaccia cool for 10 minutes, then slice. And the texture? Perfectly chewy with airy pockets, way better than my previous attempts. To test what size works best for our focaccia Dubai chocolate, I cut some pieces into thirds and others into halves. Now that our focaccia base is ready, let's talk about the real star of the experiment, Dubai chocolate. Created in 2021 by Sara Hamouda, a Dubai-based British-Egyptian chocolatier, Dubai chocolate was inspired by cravings she had during pregnancy. The original Dubai chocolate bar, Can't Get Kanafe of It, is an exclusive treat at her shop, Fix Dessert Chocolatier. In December 2023, influencer Maria Vieira 257 posted a TikTok video, now at 120 million views, showcasing Fix Chocolatier's creations. Demand skyrocketed from 6 orders a day to 100 orders per minute, turning Dubai chocolate into one of the hottest food trends of 2024. But what makes this chocolate so special? Why are people waiting in line for 10 hours just to get a taste? Dubai chocolate isn't just about the chocolate, it's about texture. According to Fix Dessert Chocolatier's website, Dubai chocolate is made with milk chocolate encasing a filling of pistachio and tahini paste, mixed with crispy kanafe. But what exactly is kanafe? Kanafe is a traditional Middle Eastern dessert made with shredded pastry dough called kataifi, layered with cheese, soaked in sugar syrup, and often topped with pistachios. This crispy, nutty, syrup-soaked pastry is the inspiration behind Dubai chocolate. To recreate the iconic flavors and textures, we're making pistachio cream for richness, a crispy kataifi layer for crunch, and a smooth chocolate coating to bring it all together. The trickiest ingredient to find is the kataifi, a fine shredded phyllo dough. I searched my local grocery stores, but ended up ordering it from Amazon instead. Now let's start with the pistachio cream. I started by adding 1 cup of unsalted pistachios, powdered sugar, cream, salt, and vanilla to a food processor. After about 15 minutes of blending, the texture was still too thick, so I adjusted the ingredients until I liked the consistency. My final pistachio cream recipe ended up being 1 cup of pistachios, 1/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons of powdered sugar, 1/2 cup plus 4 tablespoons of cream, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 1 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. You can tweak the ratios to suit your taste. The original Dubai chocolate included tahini, but I skipped it due to a sesame sensitivity. If you'd like to try it, add 1 to 2 tablespoons of tahini for a deeper, nutty flavor. This is sort of a cross between a butter and a cream, so the blend takes a while to smooth out, especially if you don't start with enough liquid. Be patient and keep processing. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 175 degrees Celsius. In a bowl, toss together 1 cup of shredded kataifi pastry, 2 tablespoons melted butter, and 1 teaspoon of sugar. Spread on a baking sheet and bake for 10 to 12 minutes until golden and crisp. Let cool completely before using. Because I had to remake the focaccia, it ended up being 2 days before I returned to the pistachio cream. It had thickened slightly in the fridge as the oil solidified. I microwaved it for 5 seconds, no more to avoid curdling the cream, and it softened right up. A double broiler would also work. Using an offset spatula, I spread a thick, even layer of pistachio cream over the focaccia slices. This amount covered 16 bars, though sizes varied. Sprinkle the cooled kataifi over the pistachio layer and press gently to help it stick. I had a little bit left of this fancy compound chocolate, so I melted that in the microwave in 30-second increments. I also roughly chopped a few pistachios for garnish. I placed a cooling rack over a baking sheet with parchment paper underneath to catch drips. I hoped to pour the chocolate over each bar, but it was too thick and didn't pour well. Instead, I spooned it on and used an offset spatula to coat the tops and sides. Place a few pieces of chopped pistachio on the top before the chocolate sets. I eventually ran out of the fancy chocolate and switched to Candy Quick. Honestly, I liked it better. It was thinner, so it was easier to coat with, though it was a slightly darker shade. I would guesstimate that I used about 16 ounces or 1 package of chocolate total to cover 12 bars. Once the tops set, I flipped each bar and coated the bottom. Let them rest on their sides to harden. This was more time consuming than I thought it would be, and I didn't end up covering the larger pieces I cut out. The smaller pieces were just easier to cover and would work better for eating. After I finished covering all the bars, I chilled them in the fridge for 10 minutes to be sure everything was fully set. And here they are, our finished Focaccia Dubai chocolate bars. Let's cut into one. Look at that cross-section. Thick pistachio cream, crunchy kataifi, and a chewy golden focaccia base. And the taste, nutty, creamy, chocolatey, crunchy, and lightly sweet. The pistachio cream brings a subtle richness without overpowering. Most of the sweetness comes from the chocolate, which keeps it balanced. From 2 failed focaccias to trying to get the consistency of the pistachio cream just right, this was quite the journey. If I made them again, I'd cut off the focaccia edges and use the center for more even bars. It's really more of an aesthetic choice, but because of how the bread rises, it tapered off at the edges. I'd also stick with Candy Quick, or an equivalent, over going fancy. It was easier to work with, and I actually liked the taste better. If you're short on time, just make the focaccia and top with pistachio cream only. It's still delicious and way less effort. The focaccia with pistachio cream is a bit more on the savory side, with a hint of sweetness. And if you throw the kataifi in, you'll get some of that textural crunch. Or for a simpler middle ground, try drizzling melted chocolate instead of full coverage. Keep these in the fridge for up to a week. The bread texture does dry out a bit over time, but it still tastes great. Chilling the bars does thicken the pistachio cream, so it doesn't exactly have that drippy effect of the original. But I also tested microwaving these for about 5 seconds, and that loosened up the pistachio cream and softened the focaccia, all without melting the chocolate. If you love adventurous baking and learning about global desserts, you'll enjoy our fusion food mashup video where we created soul food-inspired kolache and Korean-inspired croissants. Click the video on the left to watch now. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Remember, enchantment awaits. Life is just about finding it.